What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a really cool modern slip joint option from Benchmade. This is the Benchmade proper slip joint in red G10 and an S30V clip point style blade. Now, quick specs on this knife. By the way, today we're actually doing a classic Metal Complex in-car review. So for those of you who enjoyed that, that's what we're doing today. Quick specs on this knife. We've got an overall length of 6.8 inches overall, a blade length of 2.8 inches, and a weight of 2.3 ounces, roughly. So that's really cool for a bunch of reasons. Of course, it's light. It is unobtrusive, and it's going to be legal in most places. Now, the only thing that I'm carrying today is my EDC, which is the Spyderco Shaman. So I'll do a quick size comparison with the Spyderco Shaman. The Shaman is coming in at 8¼ inches overall, so you can see that this is not a big knife, though I would classify it as a larger slip joint knife. It certainly is not small, and given the fact that the scales are just ever so slightly contoured, it does actually fill out the hand pretty well. I've got another video that I'm going to do today. It's one that I've been mentioning to everybody else, and this was going to be a small part of that video, but I need to get this video out because this knife is actually a gift from my dad. And I'm going to tell a quick story here real quick. My dad, I've given my dad 2 knives in the last 10 years, and the first one, I actually mentioned it in another video. The first one was one of the original Kershaw Blurs, the one that's I think when I gave it to him is back when they were making the standard version in China or Taiwan, and this was way before this was like when I was 19, 20 maybe, so this was 10 years ago. I gave it to him, and I said, it's a really good knife, and I didn't really know what I was talking about. I kind of got lucky. Well, years later, I found it basically completely unused in his console. If you're going to watch this video, you're going to laugh. He loved that knife so much, and he told me, he was like, well, I was afraid of losing it. I was afraid of, maybe someone stealing it or me, leaving it in the jeans pocket. And so I just, I didn't ever carry it with me. And he generally uses a box cutter, on the job site. And my dad runs a construction company. And so, that made sense to me. So here recently, I was like, well, dang it, I got to find a way to get him a knife that he'll use. So here recently, he handled my Microtech Ultratech, the one that's bronze. If you haven't seen that video, there's a bronze Ultratech on my video list. And he was like, man, that is cool. How much is one of these? And I was like, it's about $300, Dad. And he was like, I don't know if I want it that bad, And I don't blame him. Not everybody's going to spend $300 on a knife like that. I think he just enjoyed the automatic nature, the out the front nature of that knife. And so I thought, you know what? I'll get him a Lightning for Christmas. And so I got him a Lightning for Christmas, and he loved it. And, he carries it sometimes. But in my head, I imagined him, carrying it maybe to inappropriate places like church or whatever. And I thought, it's kind of fun, but it's going to be inappropriate in certain situations. He may not want to always pull that thing out and use it, given, where he is. So I thought about this. What can I get for him? He, at his desk, primarily what he uses a knife for is either in his truck opening mail or opening packages, or at his desk, the same thing. So what I thought is why don't I get him a really, really nice slip joint? And the reason that I focused on the proper is because it's made with a few modern materials and modern techniques. Namely, of course, the G10, which that's always nice because compared to wood or something that might be on the scale of a classic slip joint, G10 is not going to expand or contract with heat or cold. And it's also incredibly durable. I've talked about this a lot in my recent videos. G10 is unbelievably durable. On top of that, we actually have, this is neat, the liners are skeletonized. And it does have full steel or stainless steel liners, which is great. And you do sometimes see that on slip joints. But the biggest thing that I loved is that you can actually disassemble this knife. I've watched some disassembly videos on it, and you know, slip joints can be a little tricky to put back together given how the back lock works, or essentially the spine of the knife in relationship to the blade, and they don't actually lock, slip joints. But in any case, you can take this knife apart and maintain it, which is very preferable for me in terms of longevity, because my dad, like most people's dads, they are going to use their tools, and then they are going to, you know, he's going to use this knife, he's going to close it up and put it away. And it might sit in the console of his truck, it might sit at his desk, but he's going to use it. And every now and then I can take it and clean it for him. I can take it apart, and that's nice. It's also running on phosphor bronze washers. Now, if you're wondering why I haven't closed it yet, given my situation, I have one hand. So I'm going to try and close this thing minimally, or get as many talking points in during the close as I can. The lockout on this one is very solid. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have a place in town that sells Benchmade knives. They had multiple of these in the micarta. They had it in the sheep's foot blade, and I decided, you know, knowing my dad, he's going to get the most use out of the clip point blade. I think the extra pointy tip is going to work out really well for him. He digs a lot of splinters out of his fingers, and there's going to be more, you know, use in a pointy stabby tip for what he's going to use it for than the sheep's foot blade. So the lockout is nice and solid on this one. There is no blade play left or right. Of course, there is no locking mechanism. It's a slip joint. So here's the mid stop. This one feels good. You know, I've seen some people are questioning how rigid the mid stop is, or I guess I'm probably not using the right term there, but the mid stop on this one is nice and secure. It does stop right there, and then the snap into place also feels really good. This particular one did come centered, if we can see that there. Hard to tell with the camera. This one did come centered, which is great, and it feels very solid all the way around. Now, if you look back in here to my original point, if I can get this to focus, which we are probably, it's probably going to have a little bit of trouble, but let's, yeah, we're not going to be able to see perfectly inside there, but there we go. You can see there just a little bit. It's running on phosphor bronze washers. That's great. Big fan of that. That's going to keep the action good over time. It's going to keep crap out of there, given where this is going to be used and how it's going to be used. If he keeps it, excuse me, I had to cut the video there. A truck is a great place to keep this knife. You know, if dirt and gunk is going to get in there, that's fine. It's going to, for the most part, stay out of the pivot. So that's great. Now on to the more challenging part of my review, which will be opening this knife back up with one hand. Let me see if I can do this here with friction. Can we open a slip joint with one hand? The ultimate test. Yes, we can. We can do it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're viewing a professional at work here. Sorry, I'm obviously joking. Anyways, this I think is the most excellent choice for my dad, given that it is a stainless steel, a very nice stainless steel, CPM S30V. Of course, great edge retention, excellent corrosion resistance, and decent toughness. But on a knife like this, you don't really need the excess toughness. Now, you know, if I know my dad correctly, he's going to use this knife for knife tasks, and he will probably use it every now and then for tasks that are not knife tasks. I don't really care, because you know, I'm sure that this knife is going to hold up to the things that he would try to use it for. It's small enough to where you might use it, you know, in some situations where it's just some little tiny thing, you know, maybe to dig a little bit, or, you know, essentially what you would use a slip joint for. And then anybody who's got a practiced hand with tools in general is going to reach for a larger tool when a larger tool is required. So I think given all of that, and just knowing my dad, I think this is going to work out really, really well. Now, this review is not specifically for, how my dad is going to use it, but for anybody who's considering purchasing this knife. They run about $118 on most major retailers' sites, and I think that's a really good price. You are getting a CPM steel. The knife is made 100% in the United States. You are getting G10 milled out liners, a lot of premium features, and if you have the ability to go and handle one in a store and check, like I did, then you're definitely going to get your money's worth, because this one functions properly. It is smooth for a slip joint, and there were no flaws whatsoever. I mean, everything looked great all the way around the knife, and it does lock out solid, which is awesome. I was worried about that, whether or not there was going to be play in the blade on this, given how small everything was. Speaking of that, your blade stock comes in at 0.09 or 0.08, so it's a nice thin stock. You have that kind of typical toothy Benchmade edge that I've come to expect from Benchmade knives, but it does slice just fine. So I'm very happy with that. You've got a nice little lanyard hole back here, which actually, this is if it were me, if I were going to EDC this, I actually would attach a lanyard to it. There's no pocket clip on it, and it might just make it a little bit easier to get out of my pocket, and it might actually give me, if you tie it correctly, it might actually give you a little bit more real estate to hang on to. It's worth pointing out that there is some jimping back here right at the top of the spine, and in this area it's going to be safe for you to kind of bear down on a little bit. But again, there's no locking mechanism, so if you're bearing down on this part, you're gonna get yourself in a situation where you're actually tempting the knife to close on your finger. So you really need to keep the pressure of whatever you're cutting on the blade, and you need to keep your thumb back here. But given how the handle is shaped and this little area right here for your third finger to lock in, it actually is pretty comfortable for a 3-finger position knife. But again, like I said, a lanyard might help alleviate some of that, that wanting for a little bit more in your hand. The blade shape is very functional. This is a classic blade shape. There's not really much bad you can say about a classic clip point blade. The nail nick is also large and gives your finger a lot of room to get in there. Of course, over time, gunk and stuff is going to get collected in there, but what can you say? I mean, it's a slip joint. That's the case. They did not add a nick on the other side, so I mean, it's really, I guess you can say it's a right-handed nail nick, but really, I mean, exactly how inconvenient is that for a lefty? I mean, given that there is no pocket clip on this knife, the only indicator that it might be more geared towards right-handed people is that the nick is on this side of the knife, but you can put this knife in any pocket. This makes literally a great front or back pocket knife. It's such a classic style. You really could keep this anywhere. Your car, your desk, your truck, you keep it in your tool bag, any of your pockets. It's a style that is, most people are going to be used to when they think pocket knife as a tool. This is what people are thinking of. The slow opening, the two-handed opening slip joint style knives. So most people are not going to be offended or freak out by this. The blade length is not really long enough to scare anybody, and it's also going to be legal in a lot of areas. So this is also a great knife to take with you when you're traveling. You still, I think in some places you do still have to be aware of the length and whether or not it's okay for you to carry it there. So check the laws in your area before going with this. But in a lot of situations you're going to be just fine. So I really like this, and here lately I've been kind of peeking into or exploring more slip joint options because I kind of like the idea of having one. I traditionally always carry my Victorinox in my back pocket, and while I do every now and then use the flathead feature of that and some of the other things that are on there, primarily it's just back there for a backup plain blade. When I don't want to whip the gigantic, crazy, intimidating knife out of my front right pocket, I really like having my Victorinox in the back pocket, just as if I don't need a 3.5-inch blade, then I would rather just pull out a smaller blade that can do the job. In fact, most jobs most things you're going to do with a knife simply don't require an enormous blade. Most most things that you would use a knife for can be accomplished with a box cutter sized blade. But for those of us who like to carry something a little bit more premium, this is something that suits those types of needs. And I think this is done really, really well. The micarta one's attractive. I just really like the red G10 a little bit better. And I also really like the sheep's foot blade. For me, I would go ahead with the sheep's foot blade. For my dad, I think the clip point blade just works better. And aesthetically, you should choose the one that you know is the most pleasing to you when thinking of function and aesthetics alike. But this is just, I think, just going to work out really well for my dad. Plus, his favorite color is red. So I really hope that he likes this. But I think this is awesome. I really like that it's very minimalist in design. It's very straightforward. There's nothing other than the color of the G10. There's nothing ultra flashy about it. It simply is a premium bladed tool, and I like that. And I think a knife like this is more likely to get used than one that has a lot of flashy aspects to it. And I think my dad might appreciate that about this knife. So I'm very excited to give this knife to him. I do think that this one is worth checking out. It's one of the knives in Benchmade's lineup that I am more in agreement with the price. A lot of stuff that Benchmade is selling right now, I'm not really totally in line with what they're charging for it. I think the bug out is in a good place. I think the standard Griptilian, now that they're up at S30V, is in a better place. And I think this bug out is well priced as well, given the materials. But there's a lot of stuff that I don't totally agree with. But I really do like this. This is an awesome piece, and I may actually consider one for myself. Maybe the micarta with the sheep's foot blade. But this is a great knife. Let me know, in the comment section if you're thinking about picking this up for yourself, or if you already have it, and if so, which version and why. I'd be interested to hear. I would like to see them come out with a version of this in 20 CV. Benchmade seems to like 20 CV here recently, so I think it would be really neat to see a 20 CV and carbon fiber version of this, though I'm sure they'll charge a price that is just kind of crazy, but I don't know. That might be wishful thinking at this point. In any case, that's pretty much it today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel, because there is definitely more coming. Stay tuned. There should be another video uploaded a little later this afternoon. But thanks again for watching, and have a great day.